What is going on, guys? My name is Hussein, and in this video I want to do something a little bit different. I built this little bit of to-do application which has Postgres on the back end and Node.js on also the back end, I guess. And it was a very simple HTML5 app that literally you can click, add a to-do, and then if you click, it will literally delete that to-do. So it was a little bit of a routing app, REST API, nothing fancy. However, I want to point up some little bit of a not so best practices that I used in this app, and I'm going to show you how to do better, essentially, especially on the back end when we're talking about the connection itself, right? And what can we do? And I talked about that where in another video, where some of the best practices that you can use when you connect to a database, you need to establish a specific database user with specific permissions for each route. And yeah, it's a lot of work, but it will pay off in the long run. It will give you more security. It will basically group your routes. Like if you're reading, you don't need to, like what I'm doing right now. I'm looking as a Postgres. I'm looking as admin at the backend, and I'm reading, right? That's just a waste. Plus, if someone injected some sort of a malformed SQL to inject SQL, they can drop my entire database because I am admin, right? I'm logged in as admin. So it's not really a good practice to log in as admin on your web application. So I'm just gonna show you how to create a certain users given certain permissions and create different pool of database connection. And I talked about pooling, database connection pooling. Guys, check out this video if you're interested. So how about we jump into this video? This is what I'm gonna try to do in this video. All right, guys. So the first thing to explain here, what we're doing is I have a pool, a connection pooling. This is a feature in the PG library that I'm using for Node.js. And what it does essentially is it starts with a certain number of database connection. And when you issue a query, for example, I want to read these to-dos, you can just use the pool to issue a query. And what that does, it will reserve one database connection, one TCP connection, send that query, right? And then once that query comes back, it will return the results and then release that connection back to the pool. And the reason you want to do that, and you don't want to use a single database connection and send all your queries in that single client, is because you cannot guarantee that which request comes first and which response comes first because of pipelining. And we have the same problem with HTTP, right? So it's a very bad idea to use the same TCP connection to send multiple database queries, because some of them can return before the other, and you cannot guarantee what is a request in this case, right? So that's in general, that's the idea of this. And then we're using pooling for this idea. So pooling, and you can control pooling, and I talked about that in another video. All right, so what I want to do here, what I'm using for the pool is the Postgres user, which is so bad, right? No need to use this God mode to connect to the database. So what we're gonna do here is, since I have one route that does read the to-dos, and I think one route that create the to-do, and one route that delete the to-do, I'm gonna create 3 users. I can do with 2, but I want to be fancy a little bit. Create 3, right? One with only read, one with only create, and one with only delete, all right? And I'm going to use these each pool, create 3 type of pools, and use one each for each route. So how about we do the code first, and then we create the users? Let's do that, right? So another thing, bad thing I'm doing is I'm hard-coding the passwords in the code. That's a bad idea. The best thing is to use environment variables, and there are many ways to do that. It's a little bit hectic for me to use the environment variables for tutorial, but you know the ideas, guys. It's a well-known thing. I might create another video and show you how to do that, or maybe I'm gonna do it in this video. Who knows, right? But it's really simple. You do just process.env and then dot the variable that you pass in. Maybe I'm gonna do it later. no problem. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a DB read pool, right? And this is the user for DB read is called DB read, and the password is. Here's the thing, guys, about passwords with database users. You have to create the longest possible, most incomprehensible password ever and store it in some sort of a key vault, right? Where you read that. That's the best practice. Don't store it in the code, obviously. Don't send it just, I guess you can store it in a text file somewhere as a config that is not pushed to the source code, but you can use that as well. But I'm going to use dbread because why not? All right. Because if I implemented every single best practice, this video is gonna become like 3 hours, right? You get the idea. I'm gonna talk through things that is best practice, but I'm not gonna implement everything because it's just too much, right? So I'm gonna create 3 of those: DB read pool, right, and DB create pool. I got a DB create. Let's all use lowercase, and DB read. This guy's DB delete pool. DB delete. DB delete. Right. So 3 pools, guys. 3 different pools. In the connect method, where I'm gonna connect, I'm going to actually connect all the pools together, right? Which is the DB create pool, DB delete pool, DB read pool. And this is awesome, guys, right? Because those pools will start, maybe it depends on the number of connections, the minimum number of connections that you start with. And this is configurable, and I talked about that in the pooling video. And you can start like, let's say you have so many reads, right? So you can start with, obviously, more people read than write. In general, it depends on the use case. So you can start with a lot of reads pooling. Let's say I got 10. And the deletes, obviously no one deletes. So you can start with 0. And if someone attempt to delete, we're going to spin up a new DB connection. And then obviously we're going to keep it until it dies. Keep a lifetime. All right, so 3 stuff. Obviously, let's go to each route and start using this stuff. So the read to do's function uses the pool, but we don't want to just use the generic tool. We're going to use the DB read pool to select ID text from to do's. Another thing we don't need to do is this is bad. We should, again, guys, I'm just going to talk about the bad practices here and what you can do to elevate them, but I'm not necessarily going to implement them in this video. So this is bad because this is called unbounded query. Some people say, okay, what did you say here? Unbounded, but because of my accent, maybe you couldn't get it. But it's called unbounded. That means there is no bound for it. That means if you have like 3 million rows here, you're gonna return all the 3 million. That's bad. Always limit this stuff. Either use limit 0, 10, or do some paging or something like that, right? Don't do that. Don't do paging client side. That's bad idea. But it's a tutorial. So yeah, DB read pool. DB create to do, we're going to use the create pool, and we're going to create it. This user going to only have create permission. So it's going to be able to insert, but it's not going to be able to delete. Does that make sense? Right? So even if you snuck out into the insert, if someone managed to do a SQL injection here, they won't be able to drop my database, or they won't be able to delete my stuff. They might be able to insert some stuff, right? The delete route is the riskiest here, right? If you think about it. So that's why, obviously, I don't have any authentication whatsoever on my app, right? So that's another layer of protection that you can add them. I guess this is a client-side front end, right? With JWT or just normal authentication where nobody can actually delete unless they own that stuff, right? And you can add multiple stuff. I'm just currently deleting this particular item, right? And I'm using this particular syntax, which avoids SQL injection as well. That's another way to avoid SQL injection. But that function, the creator of this library managed is doing the SQL injection for us. SQL injection is doing the sanitation for it instead of doing this one, right? That's just way better. I think that's it. If I restarted this, let's see if we get errors. Obviously, we're gonna get some errors now. It says, okay, what the hell is DB create? I don't have it, right? So now we go to PG admin, and we start creating all these beautiful roles. We're gonna create a new user or role called DB read, right? What's the DB read? What did we call it? DB read, DB read. DB read, DB delete, DB create. Okay, so DB read, right? Read only access to the to-do table, right? And privileges, they can obviously log in. Are they a super user? Hell no. Create roles? Hell no. Create databases? Hell no. Update catalog? Hell no. Inherit rights from the parent roles? Meh. Okay, I don't know. It doesn't have a parent, so it doesn't matter. And security, right? That's it. That's all we need. The trick is can they log in or not? And there is a reason where you sometimes don't need this role to be log in, because you might have just a role with set of permissions that you can assign to different tables, but it doesn't have an actual user behind it. So we save that stuff, and we're gonna go ahead and create DB create user. A user with only create or insert permission, and the password is DB create. And what they can do, can they only log in, right? Save. Then we can do boom DB delete, a user with delete permissions, and DB delete. Did I name it permission? Privileges, they can log in. Awesome. Save. Now, if I go to the to-do database, my to-do database, and I go to schema, I go all the way to my to-do table. That's my beautiful table. Right-click, properties, right? There are SQLs that allow you to do the same thing I'm about to do, but it depends really on you. What do you prefer? And now I'll go to privileges. Obviously, the owner of this table is Postgres, and that's a good thing, right? You want the owner to be someone who has like very great permissions, so that the measly different other users that consume this table only have so much permission on this table, right? So they cannot like drop your whole table or something like that. So I'm gonna add a role called PG create, and this permission is only insert, because it's a create, right? Can they select? I didn't really select. So let's try without selecting. Maybe because I don't know what the internal library does. If the insert does a select, then we might run into an error. But let's give it the minimum permissions here. Insert only, right? So A. And I'm going to create another one. DJ Khaled. DB delete. And this guy's only can delete. I don't have an update route, so you might want, if your app has an update route, you might do the same thing as here as well. All right, so this is good. Now we're gonna create a DB read, which only, oh my God, no, this has to be only select, right? A grantee must be selected. Well, I selected it, didn't I? DB read, DB delete. All right. Looks like we're good. So we have create. We have create, insert. Why does it say A? I don't know why it's called A. All right. DB read, only read. And DB delete, only delete. How about we save this puppy? And now if I start my app, let's see if we get any errors. No beautiful errors. So now let's go to my app and let's see if it works normally. We know reading works now because I just read my existing rows, right? Because what do you have, rows? We have this ASDF thing. Okay. If I insert another thing, blah, blah, blah. Oh, it failed. Okay, let's take a look. It failed. We failed to insert. As I told you guys, I wasn't sure why it would fail. So let's take a look. So create to do is what failed, right? Let's see. I did use the create pool. I am inserting into that, and maybe we just put it here, breakpoint, and see what exactly the problem. So another thing, if you notice, I didn't return the error to the user because one of the best practices, you don't need to tell the user what what is going on in your database, right? So you need to create your own errors. So if you return E, that's kind of bad because sometimes E will contain the source code and contain the line numbers, and hackers might use this to give insight into your application, where your code is, where your stuff is, and might run into a problem. So that's why I'm returning just false and true. But obviously that's also confusing because you need to tell the user, like now, right? We failed, but we don't know what's going on. So you need to specific error exceptions and stuff like that. Okay, what do we have here? Come on. It says permission denied for sequence. Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful, guys. That is so beautiful. Okay, let me explain what's happening. Okay, I completely forgot about that. So this is actually powerful stuff. So if I have two columns here, ID, which is a primary key, which is serial. Behind the scenes, this actually creates a sequence, and a sequence, guys, is a database construct that basically when you select it, it gives you a number, and you select it again, it gives you another number. It's just a sequence of numbers. Here's the thing. I gave my DB create user access to my to-do, so it can insert, but the act of inserting a new row in my to-do table triggered the sequence, right? And I need to get a new sequence. So what the database does, it reads from the to-do ID sequence in order to get the next sequence. But guess what? The user do not have permission on reading that sequence. So we need DB create to get access to the sequence, not everybody else. Just a read should be enough, right? And hopefully that a read should be enough with the select in this case. That's a good practice. That's good. I'm happy that we failed here, so we can learn the process. Let's go ahead and run this beautiful. The code, by the way, guys, will be available in the description below, and I'm gonna share the source code with you. I need to cope. I actually, that's all right. Let's try this app again. Boom, boom. Oh, another error. Permission denied again. I thought I gave you the permission. So is select is not enough? Permission denied for sequence to-dos ID sequence. But I gave you access. That's interesting. What exactly do you need? Apparently a select is not enough, guys. All right, let's read it again. Despite me giving you the security, I gave you a read with a grant permission. No, definitely not. Maybe usage? That's a different. I don't know what usage means here. There's a difference between select and usage. Let's give it usage. Maybe we'll read about that later. Refresh. And then boom. Boop. Okay. Looks like we did it, guys. So the trick was not select per se, it's usage. The idea, reading a sequence, the current sequence is different than using the sequence to generate a sequence, apparently, right? So that's the difference here. With this sequence, we need to give them two permissions: DB sequence and DB grant and select. Well, usage, sorry. Usage and select. That's awesome. How about delete? Does delete work? Oh. I don't think delete is working, guys. Let's take a look. Why is delete not working? Because if I click, Let's put a, what the heck? Boom. All right. DB delete pool. Boom. Why? Permission denied for table to-dos. All right, guys. So I think I know what's going on, but let's first fix the bug that in my client side. Why when I click delete and I fail and I return false, nothing happened in my client. It doesn't tell me anything. So I'm gonna go to my index page and see delete. Where's my delete method here? And it says, okay, if not succeed, that should have failed, right? But I'm not even getting that. So I'm going to do a little bit debug on the client side here to see why that's a problem. So let's just do some little bit of client side coding here. It's been a while. It's been a while. Beautiful HTML code. Let's do that. Boom. And then refresh. And then let's just, hopefully I clicked on it. Did I? Yes, I did. Now this will fail. Go ahead and fail. False. Return false. We got back here. The success is true? What are you talking about? How is this true? That's wrong. That is wrong. How is the result true? We clearly, right? Let's do it again. Let's do it this side here. I'm gonna move my breakpoint somewhere else. And let's just remove these. So I did remove these. Okay. So we return false. Let's do to delete to do. Oh, look at that, guys. We're not using this stuff. That's just dumb, man. All right. So the bug here is this should be like that, right? Result of success equal this. We're not actually setting that thing. That's just bad. Okay. Now, if let's try without debugging because I have confidence this will work. If I do this, oh, that's it, failed. That's exactly what I want. Okay, now it failed. And here's why it failed. What did we give the delete permission, guys? The DB create, DB delete, we only give it delete. But if you look closely to what the delete user is doing, it is not only deleting, it is actually, it needs to identify what are the rows in order to delete it. So it's technically, it needs to find the ID in the database and then deletes that. The act of finding is a select. So you need to give it a select. Okay. So that's what was missing here. So we go properties, Sakoyorotei, DB delete, give it a select, which is not a big deal. And just like that, refresh. Now we have refresh here. Boom, deleted. Add, to do, there, to do, another to do. Boom, 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 boom. That's awesome, man. Now we have a beautiful application with a specific database user for each REST route. How about that, guys? Hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a like if you like it. Share it with your friends. I'm going to see you in the next one. You guys stay awesome. Goodbye. Check out the other content on this channel, by the way, guys. We talk about backend mostly in this channel. That's my specialty. All right. Let's see you in the next one, guys. Stay awesome. Goodbye.